getting better. I make jokes all the time. So she said to me today, she goes like, if you keep doing this thing without a condom, I'm going to make you get a test. And I was like, oh, okay. So you want to be serious? And I was like, okay, great. And I said in Spanish, I said, so when is the wedding? Yeah, but she's older and doesn't want to have kids, and it's actually great.
How old is older for you? Like 22?
She's 5, okay? She's 37 years of age, but doesn't look it at all, and has had a unique life and has interesting Jewish people in her life, which I appreciate. And yeah, she always says that I look like I'm a model, and I'm like, I said, whatever, it's fine. Thank you.
Why? How's your stuff going?
I'm still with Jessica. So, I mean, are you talking relationship wise or just generally?
Yeah, both. We can have a check-in. Let's have a check-in.
Oh, well, I mean, being a Californian my whole life, I didn't realize how much I got used to just sun all the time. And so there's just, even in Texas for winter, it's just dark and rainy and shabby, and I feel that significantly. So I got to very actively think about how to rally against the darkness of the light.
Okay, totally. I hear you. So what happens here is that most of the year it's sunny like at all the time and then very moderate. But then like around this time of year, it gets so cold at night, and I can be kind of a little bit of a vampire, that the place just stays cold. And so even if it's not cold during the day, it's like 75 or 80 Fahrenheit. I have to either open the whole place up or run the heater, and then I, generally speaking, will stay in bed because it's just, I keep weird hours. So anyways, blah, blah, blah. What I've been doing is about once a week, I will do the cámara de bronceado. I will hit the tanning bed once a week.
Actually, I thought about doing that because the sun came out a couple of days ago, and not only was it obvious for myself how much that influenced my energy, but just everything was happening maximally everywhere in the city. And up until then, everyone, like, you just start to just be that.
Yeah.
And then when it was sunny, just people were fucking blooming.
Yeah. So imagine a place like Montreal where it gets down to -40 Celsius. I mean, the most unbelievably cold place I've ever been, to the point where I'm like, this is another planet and it's not fit for human survival. But then in the summertime, the girls are practically topless, what with the braless wonders going on. And it's just amazing. And I wouldn't, with a gun to my head, consider Montreal in the wintertime or the fall. It's basically from like October to like April or May, where it's completely unlivable. But then in summertime, look the fuck out, because them girls are buck wild.
Yeah, I mean, same here. There's a lot of topless agenda. I think it's an agenda. I think it's being pushed on us. Oh God, I think it was you who posted it, but I'd seen it before. But minimalism is being pushed by big small to sell more less. That it's important to be absolutely spot on with how that was phrased, but yeah, it was being pushed by big small to sell more or less. That's the meme of the year for me, undoubtedly.
So when I started writing those stupid quips back in I think it was 2013, when I first had one that was picked up on a Tumblr, that was always the goal, is just to say something very witty and funny or insightful, but in 6 words or 5 if you can. And I still think that's the goal of anybody. Stephen Wright, his one-liners?
Of course.
Okay, so he does that all the time. Or who's the one with the donut?
Mitch Hedberg?
Yes, Mitch Hedberg. Thank you.
Yeah.
He's great too. And if you're really good, I mean, don't get me wrong, certain people are great at being loquacious and chatty and keeping people interested. And, Kevin Delaney is one. He's so funny. Any good comedian will have to set a thing up and then pay it off, right? And that's how it goes. But if you are a true timeless genius, it's 6 or 7 words. And you can knock down the whole house in 6 or 7 words.
Yeah, I use that meme as a litmus test for not who to get rid of in my life, but who is on that level of precision funny. Big, small to sell more less is just untouchable.
So, okay, let's pick it apart. It's the structure of the joke. And those kinds of jokes have been coming up because, first of all, there's the conspiracy theorists, right? Like the QAnon people who believe that Nancy Pelosi is a lizard person and a lot of other nonsense, right? Some of them are, plausible, and others you're just I facepalm every word you speak, but okay, fine. But then in the construct, let's say, whereby we have this assembly of a joke that is, in that style, the pushback says that okay, everything cannot be a conspiracy theory. What's the other one? Birds aren't real. Okay, fine. Birds aren't real. Great. Thank you. I needed that. Thank you so much for cluing me in. Here's what the real truth is, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. But in the time in which there's so much of that chatter about conspiracy theorists, using that construct to make something absurd is absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, that's the word I was going to say, that you take the absurdist thing all the way to the end, and for people with a sense of humor, it's a good laugh. And for the sheeple being dragged along the way, they're like, I always knew it. I fucking knew it. Birds are, okay, this is going to sound crazy, but as a kid, I found this bird and I swear to you it wasn't real. I'm like, no, yeah, that was it. That was it for us, for all of us. That was
It's
it.
so, it's so disappointing that like there's like this whole boomer thing that really came out of Star Trek that said like, oh, we're pushing toward this technological wonderland and utopia whereby the cars are flying and we're reading each other's thoughts and food is in a pill, all this stuff. And so one of the reasons why, like our father, for example, is so excited about his iPad or Alexa is because in like the 1960s, it was the promise of science fiction whereby we would be living in this techno wonderland of bliss and freedom and racial equality. And unfortunately, the stupids are kind of ruining that.
Yeah. All right, I got another one for you. So the thing that's been going around, babe, you've hardly touched your Grinchamole, and it shows some Grinch-shaped guacamole, and that got taken to the absurd end that I saw it the other day. It was, babe, you've hardly created any shareholder value. And then the one after that was, babe, you've hardly done anything with your life at all.
Let's go.
Yeah, you're left with either a laugh or I guess you could be offended, or it's just like, yeah, but because like a meme before it became what it is today, you of all people know the origin of that. Like these things move through the culture like an entity, and they get taken to their absurd end, which would be jumping the shark or being used so many times that the funny falls out the bottom of it.
Sure. So the word meme, right? Let's pick it apart. Let's be relatively academic for a brief period of time.
Yeah.
It goes back to this guy Richard Dawkins, who talked about the way genes move, and that genes move in a selfish way, and that memes are like a cultural gene. They move in their own selfish way.
Yeah.
Susan Blackmore, and I know I gave you this book back in like the early 2000s, wrote a book about this stuff, that memes have their own kind of like life and velocity and all the rest of it. Yeah. So to the point where, because we're both getting, I think I'm 2 years older than you, but we're both getting up in age, as a certain family member used to say. And I see like the trolley problem amongst my tech bro friends.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you guys, it is no longer 2012. I do not see the purchase that you think your meme should find. The relevancy just isn't there. And I do understand that there are self-driving cars and that there is a literal thing to it. But the absurdist, as soon as the thing becomes too literal, and as you have always said, too on the nose, that's when the absurdists take over. And, it's just another big small trying to sell us more or less. It's the only way the trolley problem will ever be relevant to me again. I'm like, I get it, and it's philosophical, and at one time it was definitely insightful. I don't think that time is now.
Yeah, but even as far as the memes go, there is some language in the original definition that still carries over to the modern version of memes, which is generators and replicators, because like there are people that are just fucking gold mines of originalisms, and then there's just those who perpetuate it. But you still have to be pretty thoughtful or to curate good memes. Like I've been enjoying the response to taking all the memes that I see and sharing the ones that I feel are just what I think is funny, because it's like I'm pulling the top 1% out of that, and then people think that I'm some sort of a special thing. I'm like, no, someone else created this. I just know what funny is, man. Like I just take the best of it and I want to share it with you.
There's nothing wrong with that. Yeah. So, okay, again, let's be semi-scientific very briefly. It's like 90% of people will repost a thing or will copy somebody else's content, and about 10% do something new. Yeah. And of those 10%, you know how some people are. They're like the quiet kid in school who just didn't have access to a gun, but probably would have shot up the school. Didn't have a chance. We all know people like this. You're just like, I don't even know why we're friends. I feel kind of odd social obligation to not unfriend you despite your absolute lead balloons that you drop, which sound to you funny. I have this friend, this Israeli friend, who I fully sarcastically said, I was like, wow, he always sends stuff to me. Because once you get known, I'm sure this happens to you. Once you get known as a person who posts the funny, people bring funny to you as though they're like, you have to see this. I'm like, I don't have to see this. I'm not reposting it, and it's not for me.
It's been very disappointing. I really underestimated the disappointment. It's really rare that I get sent things where I'm like, finally, someone is doing for me what I'm doing for others. They send it to me, and then I have this like string of laugh reacts to them, and I'm like, dang, if I don't laugh react to this one, they're gonna know how much I hate it. Is there like a more subtle laugh react? Does it have to be tears laughing? Can it just be like a I guess?
Did you see Hail Caesar?
Yes, but not in a way that I'd remember it like I remember Intolerable Cruelty.
Okay, well, it's worth it because it's got some, there's a lot of great characters and there's some great stuff. But one of the Ray Fiennes lines that he's trying to beat, a melodramatic English period piece into a cowboy Western idiot. He says he's directing the guy to deliver a mirthless chuckle. So the emoji that you're looking for is in fact a mirthless chuckle, should one exist. It's terrible. Man, I like the effort that people put into it, but it never quite lives up to it. And I'm not, the spotlight has to be on me. Like when people are funny, people are funny. It could be the guy walking down the street, or it could be somebody who's like a professionally trained comedian. And I'm not being stingy with the laughs. What I'm saying is you're not eliciting said laughs.
Have you ever listened to or watched Mike Birbiglia?
Of course, yeah. The sleepwalking story and all of This American Life stuff. He's a talent. Yeah,
so his version of comedy, like just like anything would, my idea of what is funny has evolved over the years, and certain comedians have fallen off, like correlative to their level of fame. Like you get into that space where now you have a family, now you have a lot of money, you're not on the pulse as much, you're living a life that is not as relatable, and for me that is so noticeable that it falls off. But Birbiglia is such an incredible storyteller that his jokes are good, and the way he does his regular callbacks to, like, you have this story, it has planted a seed in your brain of funny, and then there are certain things along the way that harken back to the thing that he already said, but then the thing that happens at the very end wraps up, not everything, but man, so many parts of it come together at the end of it and just ends in a bow and a standing ovation, because it was as much just an overall performance as it was a comedy show, and that is what has stood the test of time to me, because it's good storytelling, not just good jokes.
Sure. So the idea of any artist, regardless of if you're making music or you're an actor or you're spinning the funny, is you have to stay culturally relevant. And that means staying plugged into what people like and how that changes, right? Because like we've seen this happen where like Michael Richards, right, is like making like ninja jokes. And it's like, well, we're having a Me Too moment now. And sir, that may or may not be relevant anymore. I'm sure everybody will agree that you are a funny person, but unfortunately not today, sir. But thank you very much for trying.
Did you see the episode of Comedians in Cars Getting Coffee with Michael Richards?
They tried to bring it back. I think I might have watched a clip from it, but not the whole thing. Did they address that? Because Jerry's one of the few people who he will not even open his mouth unless he's got some funny to deliver.
Yeah, well, no, they had a moment, because I don't know if it was pre-cancel culture or right on the front cusp of cancel culture, Michael Richards doing that, which that has turned into throwing people in the cultural garbage for the most mild of transgressions, but you could argue that his was on the severe side. But like we all knew that word was done a while ago. But no, he brought it up, and it was like, yeah, okay, being funny. But no, they had a moment where Michael Richards brought up that Jerry stayed by his side through all of that, and how proactive that was. Who knows? But maybe just by not turning a back on him, it was staying by his side, because of all people, Jerry can understand saying a thing that like somewhere between didn't land or got you hated a little bit. And it's like, is there no fucking path to redemption? Like, we'll allow murderers to come back to society, but then certain things we will just, you said a thing that made people mad, like you don't get to participate in culture anymore. That's hogwash, man. And so they brought it up, and Kramer, Michael Richards, was very grateful that at least a friendship remained through that kind of a misery where you do something very regrettable and you get 1% of your life after that for a while. That was wild.
So it's tricky. I don't know that I think we've talked about this once before, but I don't know if there's like a court that adjudicates this stuff, or like it's ever offered on a level playing field with like the right standard. If, for example, OJ Simpson, who arguably committed double murder, has found his way back to social media, and I'm like, I don't know even before all that he was so devastatingly entertaining / funny / handsome that we necessarily needed him. But the tendency of stardom is to continue continue on until something, you know, like a double murder occurs. And then you're like, oh, maybe he should go away for a while. But as soon as he was out of the clink, he jumped right back on Twitter and, you know, TikTok. And people tried to like sabotage him by like, you know, saying, oh, you're the first murderer I've ever met. Congratulations. There was a Sacha Baron Cohen thing that tried to trap him. You know, Sacha Baron Cohen doing an unbelievably elaborate character because it's getting harder and harder for him to like sneak into disguise and pull something off. And okay, so there's probably an example of somebody who's like, maybe we don't need him anymore. I don't know that he's relevant, and I don't know even when he was relevant, he was necessarily that entertaining. But when it's something like, if you said a thing one time, I don't know, maybe it's a timeout. But I certainly agree with you, whereby there's no need to end a person's entire creative career over something. Elon has repeatedly put his foot in his mouth after the questionable Twitter thing, and he's attempting to be more proactive, whereby as soon as he's like, I don't know, death to the Jews or whatever it was. Whatever he said. He immediately then got on a plane, his private plane, of course, and went to Israel for like an afternoon and then met the prime minister and tried to redeem himself. I don't know if that worked and if Twitter is suddenly now thriving again. I kind of doubt that. I think Twitter was out the window, you know, 10 years ago, but I'm a jerk. But yeah, I don't know. If there could be a scale, like a sliding scale of cultural transgressions, it's certainly not being implemented evenly. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that was a lot. So with the juice, to where that started with OJ, I would argue that he got a boost from all of that because like he was kind of silly as, oh look, there's an incredible athlete in movies like the Naked Gun movies, like not a good actor but such an incredible athlete. We're like, just put him anywhere, everyone loves him. And then during the time of the trial and all that, like all sorts of stuff's going on afterwards. Some people were like, he's done, he murdered, but because we're in this like sarcasm era of cynical everything, now it's like, oh my god, you're hilarious, you're the guy that killed those people and nobody cares, this is amazing, can you sign something and can you hold this knife to my girlfriend's throat for a picture? And that guy gets a pass, but you say something that hurts a group of people's feelings, they're like, no, never again. That guy killed people. Like, yeah, well, you know, he was a really good athlete. Come on, man. But yeah, we're at that point where certain people get a pass and certain people don't, but like the court of public opinion is not something that is like alterable. Like your legacy or your how you're viewed amongst the people, the only thing that seems to change that is when the next fucking scapegoat comes around and everyone who can't think their own individual thoughts just pours their hate and personality into this new thing that is arbitrary and meaningless until one day they decide to make it the bulk of their personality. It's a weird time in that way.
It kind of peaked, I think, a little bit. I think it's kind of going away. The one to me that I always laugh at is Al Franken, who is he's just a comedian, and you know, he is really smart. I watched him one time when he was running for the Senate to represent Minnesota, that he drew from memory the whole United States. I'm like, you got to pass anything to become to go from a comedian to a politician just by virtue that you know enough of the geography of the U.S. I'm like, that guy's gold. He's smart and he's interesting and he's funny and he has progressive ideas that I tend to agree with. And then somebody came out and said there's a woman that he like patted her on the lower back 27.5 years ago, and then he's out. I'm like, you know, I don't really like politics. There's a lot of heartbreak, disappointment, corruption, and just like crap in general. It's a crappy situation. But I'm like, probably he could have kept his job for touching the woman's lower back, you know, nearly 3 decades ago.
There was more to it than that, but barely more. I believe that there are pictures of him putting his hands on or over the tits of a sleeping female soldier, because it's like, Al Franken's here, and it's like, I don't know if he's actually touching her while she sleeps, but like the picture is hands over sleeping tits, and like, man, it's so funny how generationally these things change, where it's like a sleeping person, they fell asleep before everybody, and we're in this like combative group of people. You're going to be fucked with. Be ye male or female, you are to be fucked with. Hand in warm water. You're gonna piss yourself. We're gonna draw a mustache on you. We're gonna glue a dildo to your forehead. It has nothing to do with anything other than having a laugh. And why should females be exempt from that? And like now that is like arguably, I certainly wouldn't do something like that now, but 20 years ago, would I have? Probably. I don't know. Just the times are a little bit different. But we do look back on prior generations with the understanding of today, which really fucks up memory retroactively. It's peculiar.
Yeah, I think that the name of what you're describing is called being chief. And I just shared the photo of you from a few years ago with your cat sleeping on your head when we were, tour back in California years ago. And I think that there were multiple scenes in I didn't see all of them, but at least the first one, the Hangover movies, when they're in Vegas and like Mike Tyson's falling asleep, like, so one of the main characters is doing all kind of wicked shit to him. I think that that's probably fine. But then in, a few years, as the culture progresses, that's probably punishable by death. I don't know.
Yeah, so I have seen. But yeah, Elon Musk is a weird one because I would argue he does so much good or so much work for the benefit of the many that we allow certain things to slide, and it's rare we've seen someone in a position that has so much money that stands out as, generally speaking, acting very differently than those with money. Like, he had just someone, and I knew this was a thing, but I'd never heard it in person. Somebody fart honked at me in the Squatch parking lot the other day. They had a Tesla, and it can make a fart sound. And I'm like, come on, man. That's so great that somebody who creates these vehicles that are omnipresent and incredible makes a fart sound available as a horn honk. Like, it's so petty, but that's such a great representation of where this guy's head's at. That's fucking wonderful.
I tend to agree with you. I think that a lot of the problems that he's faced are real world problems that are hard to get over. But if I always evaluate just on the things that I like, because I'm, opinionated and very picky, which is the space business. And it's one of the hardest things to do is to send anything up into space, but they've done it so many times and at a scale and with the success rate that kind of beats everyone. That argument that you made about him, I used to apply to people like Woody Allen and Michael Jackson because they were just very, very gifted. But even right now saying that, I'm probably leading myself right into hot water, thinking that the cultural contributions of two creative juggernauts who were known for a wide variety of amazing things should have their transgressions passed over. In fact, I'd have to check through the peephole, but I'm pretty sure there's a lynch mob with the torches and the pitchfork waiting for me just by suggesting that. I'll get back to it, let you know.
Michael Jackson is without a doubt, like, I wouldn't say a personal hero at this point in my life, but like what he was to me growing up and anybody who grew up in that time. Like, you have no idea what it was like to witness the rising of a creature like that. And that doesn't make anything that he did okay, but I can't change what I think about somebody's legacy as far as like the quality of what it was based on a horrible mistake they may have made. I am able to separate those things very easily, but somebody who didn't, like Maya having been 10 years younger than me, that's just a monster. He's always been a monster. Nothing he did matters because he's a monster. I'm like, well, you didn't experience any of what I did, and I'm not going to say you're wrong in your opinion, but that he was just so prolific. I'm like, yeah, it doesn't change how much I loved everything that he did. And I actually got to face a real life version of that where I like weigh my morals, ethics, and values against a transgression of somebody and weigh that against their professional abilities. Because we can have our ideas in our heads, but then when it plays out, the guy that did all of my stem cell treatment in Santa Rosa, in my shoulder, knee, elbows, all of that, he was a fucking, not a pedophile because that's very young kids, but he very much got caught in a sting trying to meet up with a 12-year-old girl from the internet. And like each time I went to his office, I'm like, it is a barren wasteland in here, and this guy is really cheap for a doctor. This is all very interesting, and I don't know. Like one time, I'm like, I'm gonna look this guy up and see what this guy's all about. And I'm like, well, I guess he didn't actually diddle the child, but he was on his way to. But he has a really nice centrifuge, and he's really good at being gentle with that 2-inch long needle into my knee hole, and so fucking run it, doc. Fucking
That's hilarious.
Steal my blood and give it back to me because I am not a 12-year-old girl and I feel safe in here. But do you think that I told Maya, who was my girlfriend at the time, that I was going to see the pervert doctor for more fucking blood juice? No way.
That's great. That's great. So that is an excellent real world example, and good for you. So I think that the appearance of impropriety and actual impropriety are different things. And because of my business working with the models, I look like I should be a dirtbag. You know, I'm older. I always got this little like shit-eating grin going, like, oh, this guy, if anybody's diddling somebody, this the joke's on them, because my reality is that I'm kind of more of a drug person than I am, a sex person. And I really just want to make money with my interesting friends. I've worked with famous people since like 2003. So what is that, like 20 something years? And I just kind of want to keep this going because it's fun and I can work from home in my jammies. But because of how it looks, right? What's that line from It's Always Sunny? Because of the implications. So the implications are, I've got a list as long as my leg of young hot girls, all of whom are above 18, or most of whom are above 18. Some are 17. Like almost everyone's 18, but I don't actually work in their physical presence. And there are all these checks and balances we have along the way to make sure that people are doing work they want to do, and they're involved in a way that's like legal and above board. And we're doing this for professional reasons, not for like secret sexual reasons. That being said, because of the implications, I had two models who have tried to turn things around that I have done. Like, we've gotten into a beef over some professional bullshit, usually a contractual dispute. And they're like, I'm going to cancel you. When people look up your name, it's going to say cancel. And I'm like, that's because there are so many things that I've done on a near habitual basis with respect to like chemical dalliances. And if they ever came and knocking on my door, federales or policier or whoever the fuck, and they're like, we got you for drugs, I'll be like, they got me. It would happen. I'm fucked. But if they're coming around asking questions about which one of the girls is my personal girl or any kind of dumb shit, I'm like, you guys got the wrong guy. I'm actually really nice to them if they're nice to me. And if anytime we get in a fight, it's usually because they have a personality disorder or think that their social media standing equates to their clout in real life. I'm sorry, but that's not the case. So in this particular situation, not unlike the potential diddler of youngsters with the stem cell apparatus, I don't know. I mean, I think that he had a meaningful intent probably, whereas I just kind of want to, wake up at noon and do things on the internet for money. But who's to say?
Yeah, I mean, that doctor was just a fat, introverted nerd with no social skills. And I'm like, I don't think you were supposed to do that, man, but I get it. You don't really have that. You don't have that many opportunities. And like, he's always been really nice to me. I did not bring in any children. I myself am not a child. He had very tender hands with me. Yeah, I used his skill set to my advantage, man. He really knew how to stick a needle into flesh. I don't know what else he did with it. I know for me, he used it to my satisfaction and benefit, and just the lowest possible price for stem cells that a doctor on the fringe of legality could charge.
God. That's priceless.
Yeah,
so I did ask because so I can discuss with my own legal team for future dispute resolution. Did he go to jail? What happened to him?
I believe it may have been a 6-month jail term that got commuted. That like you don't have to do it, and then you are on like a 10 years of one more mistake and you're fucking done. So it was something like that. Like, he even got to hold on to his, I don't know, doctor plaque, his doctoral certificate, his title. Got to hold on to that. But like, they're like, nobody under 32 can come in now. I'm like, that seems arbitrary. But like, no kids. Like, he only worked on the elderly. So there were stipulations that I remember reading about that were in the article that I had read, but it was just like more or less a slap on the wrist, certainly some probation, and then 10 years of your license is one mistake away from being compromised. And so like, hey, that means I had a guy fucking backed into a corner. He legally had to do the best possible job. Oh man, he had all the motivation in the world to give me my best stem cells back to me.
Okay, so that's very interesting to know. That reminds me of two things, both of which I think are funny. Have you ever heard of terrorism tourism before?
Terrorism tourism? No, I don't even know where to go with that. No.
Okay, great. So we're in Istanbul, right? Beautiful world city, full of UNESCO World Heritage sites, former seat of the Roman Empire. Istanbul was Constantinople, blah, blah, blah. Beautiful place. President's kind of mouthy, bit of a dictator. dictator, shot his mouth off, ran afoul of ISIS, right? Those guys don't fuck around. And somebody blew up a cafe in like the nicest, most cosmopolitan, most beautiful part of Istanbul. Yeah, maybe like 10, 12 people died, a bunch of people were injured, and everybody's terrified to go to Istanbul, except those of us who practice terrorism tourism. In this case, the odds statistically are extremely low that anything bad will happen there in the immediate future, and the cost of flights fucking cheap, and the availability of Airbnbs through the roof. So might as well go for it. You know what I mean? Get those great stem cells while the guy's, in the hot seat.
I unintentionally enacted my own version of terrorism tourism, and the destination, the doctor's office in Santa Rosa. The rates are cheap. The people are particularly kind because they have to be.
That's great. Okay, which brings us to the second thing. Now, we've discussed in previous episodes, I've been living in Mexico City for quite some time. And because I'm not, on the run or anything, as some might have you believe, I intend to, at some point in time, return to Southern California. So I was trying to hold on to the place in Santa Monica. It's on Ocean Avenue. It's got a nice view. It's rent controlled. Seems like a nice thing to do. Seems like something worth holding on to. So I had a subletter, as they call them the British Zaki, a bit of a substance issue, but whatever, it's fine. Very stable for like a year and a half. And then I found a young lady who was like 26 to stay in the place. And the young lady who was 26 was friends with my assistant, and she came highly recommended. They're both into horses. And I kind of think people that do horse things probably have money and are trustworthy because it's animals. It's the same thing in your world with the dogs. So girl gets in there, girl's living there for less than a month, immediately Airbnbs it, immediately gets caught. And in Santa Monica, there are rules that say you can't Airbnb it. So by digging a little deeper, after I had to throw her ass out of there because they were going to throw me out of there, that she was throwing out books and like betting and all this other stuff that she didn't find to be aesthetically pleasing. And it added up quite a bit. And so I talked to my assistant, who's the nicest person on planet Earth, and I have no bad things to say about her. She's a total sweetheart. She says exactly what you said a second ago. Well, she's always been nice to me. She threw away a bunch of shit and then tried to blame me for it. Yeah. And then on top of everything else, we dig a little bit, and she's got multiple felonies and shots on the internet under this other name that we didn't know about. And again, I go back to assistant. I'm like, can you help me with it? I don't want to get in the middle of it. And we've been good friends for a long time, and she's always been nice to me. And I'm like, if I did anything remotely close to that to somebody, I would probably be in jail. But not only is this 26-year-old person not in jail, but she's still friends with my assistant. I'm like, you're not my assistant anymore. I don't know. Trust you.
I mean, as someone who works with animals, you should know immediately that horse girls are one to keep an eye on, friend. They are a strange lot.
Is that really true, or are you just saying that to be funny?
Oh, no. By all means, look it up when we're done, sir. Horse girls are a strange lot. There is something different about that version of a person, for sure.
Okay, well, that's interesting to know. I happen to think, because of my business, that girls kind of stick together and they're more likely to believe each other, and with good reason, because guys are very often the perpetrator of terrible things, usually sexual or societally, unacceptable things. And so 9 times out of 10, I'm sure they're right. But in this case, like, it was one of them, things that was thrown out was one of my fine art books. And like, the printer went out of business during COVID. Shit cost like $1,000 to get printed. And I was accused, mind you, nobody said throw out any book you'd like. She fully took that upon herself. I was told that my book contains girls fingering themselves. And I'm like, well, I must have missed that one when it went to the printers, because to my knowledge, I haven't shot that particular photo, but what the hell do I know? I'm just some asshole living in Mexico City.
Man, yeah, well, that's what happens when you leave your place into the hands of a maniac.
Yeah, of a horse girl, evidently.